Hi there. Okay, in this video lecture, we're going to talk about retailing and wholesaling. We tend to many times approach marketing in terms of manufacturers, but also it's important to understand that um, the retail distribution network and wholesaler distribution networks are very important part of it, and you might find yourself working in that part of the sector. First, we want to go over various retailer types. Not all retailers are the same. We have specialty stores, which tend to carry narrow product lines, um, but very deep, selection within that product line. So they're going to have a wide assortment there. And some examples, be like Tiffany, which is a jewelry store, or any other jewelry store, the Body Shop, Athlete's Foot. These are just examples. One of my favorites is a store called Just Bulbs. I don't believe it's a chain, but in Manhattan, I actually was working for someone, and there was some strange European projector bulb that needed to be replaced, and I was sent out. I was a gopher at that company, and they sent me to some place on, I think it was Broadway at 22nd Street. I think it's moved since then. And there's a place called Just Bulbs, and I didn't think there was a chance in hell they would have this exotic bulb, but they did. Oh yeah, sure, no problem, and they got it. Now that's all they had in the store, though. That's kind of sort of an extreme example of that. If I had wanted to place, if I had wanted a lampshade, I would have had to go someplace called Just Shades. Uh, I'm kidding there, but this is unusual. But these are retailers that are specialized, very heavily specialized in one particular area, and they will then have a deep selection within that area. Sort of in the opposite direction, we have department stores. Department stores, such as Macy's, Bloomingdale's, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom's. Um, and they are large stores that have many different product types, but they may not have a deep selection within each product category. So they're trying to sort of cover the bases, and department stores are very convenient. You can see a lot of different. You can shop for different types of products all under the same roof. We of course are all very aware of supermarkets. I'm sure we've all gone there. Mostly food and household products, sponges, cleaning supplies, other types of things there. You have also some stores have become what are called hypermarkets, where they have a far deeper range of products beyond, the typical household and food items. These essentially are low volume stores, but they're high volume stores. So low margin, high volume. They don't make very much on each item, but they sell a lot. So that's where they might make their money through high volume. I actually spoke to somebody who worked in a retail store, and he said their probably the net margin on any given product was usually around maybe 3%. Which is not very much. Their gross margin was probably around 30%, but their net margin was about 3%. So you got to sell a lot of that stuff to make any money. And you're all familiar with examples: A&P, Food Town. A lot of these others here listed are very common, and there are other chains as well. Then we have convenience stores. Convenience stores are usually relatively small. Certainly compared to supermarkets, and they sell high turnover products that are in demand. They don't sell much in the way of off brands. So they'll carry Coke and they'll carry Pepsi, but they won't carry Royal Crown Cola. They won't carry RC. And they'll try to carry a lot of different products, but only the highest turnover products. Potato chips, various types of chips will be there because they turn over very quickly. They're bought very quickly. And you're not going to get coupons for convenience stores. Save that for the supermarkets, because their value to the customer is that they're convenient. They're in a convenient location. They're open during convenient hours. Some are actually open 24 hours a day. I remember one case. I was actually camping with my son in the Adirondacks, and somebody pointed out that my son had gotten this really awful rash on his back. So we went to the local health hut, the health building, to find some Benadryl, and I think the Benadryl we found was like 10 years old. And I said, well, this is ridiculous. Unfortunately, it was nighttime, and I had to drive about half an hour to the nearest town. Um, and luckily, there was a convenience store there that was still open. It was about to close. It was going to close at 9 o'clock, and I think I got there at 8:45. Up in that area in the Adirondacks, I think most things close at 5 or 6 o'clock. Um, they don't stay out late. So I still paid a lot of money for though, because that was it was the only place within probably 30 miles that would have this, the Benadryl, and so that's what you have to do. Um, so you're going to have slightly higher prices. These are not value items you're going to get, value deals you're going to get here. And you're familiar with me, that probably 7-Eleven and Quick Check are two of the most common examples of this type of store. We also have discount stores, Target, Walmart, Kohl's. These are, they're selling general merchandise. They're kind of like department stores, only they're selling at discount prices. You're not getting usually the top of the line. But you may get reasonable, very reasonable quality merchandise there. Then we have off-price retailers like TJ Maxx and Marshalls and Costco. Again, there you're getting maybe like Costco, you're getting things in large quantities. Superstores, often referred to as category killers. These are specialty stores, but in large bulk. And you're probably familiar with some Staples. Staples is essentially what we used to call a stationery store. You buy paper. Of course, obviously, we now have computers and other things that they, not so much computers, but all the things like the toner and webcams and other attachments. So it's essentially office supplies. And Staples, for instance, and this is the reason it's called a category killer. It put a lot of the smaller stores out of business, specialty stores. I remember there used to be I remember I worked in Manhattan for many years, and there was a stationery store on almost every block. And once Staples opened, that pretty much killed that off. PetSmart and Best Buy and some of these others completely wiped out some of the others. Barnes and Noble, really destroyed the independent bookstore. As the last time I checked, there were only about maybe 12 independent bookstores in the entire state of New Jersey. Almost every other town had a bookstore. Not so anymore. And yes, yeah, I know Barnes and Noble is getting a lot of competition from Amazon, but Barnes and Noble is still going strong. Some people like to just go into a store and touch the books. Home Depot is another great example. Home Depot has not completely wiped out the local hardware store, but has hurt them considerably. But Home Depot is more than just local, small hardware items, like hammers and nails and such. But it's more of part of the do-it-yourself trend that has developed in the last few years. They wiped out two other chains. These were do-it-yourself chains. Home Depot came in and did it so much better, so much bigger, and they put these two out of business. Ace Hardware also is still around at the time of this recording, and they get a lot of they get really hurt by Home Depot. And I spoke to the marketing director at one for a chain of Ace Hardwares and said, "What happens when Home Depot comes in?" He says, "We get hurt badly." So these are specialty stores, but on grand scales, and that's why they're kind of dangerous to their competitors. Very difficult to compete with. Obviously, we in the 21st century we have a lot of online retailers, um, Amazon, eBay, Travelocity, where you see a lot of people selling their product. Not just that. I mean, you have people who are like crafters, and they have specialty. They have Etsy, and they'll sell their products through Etsy. So online retailers have become very powerful, obviously. And many traditional brick and mortar retailers have simply added online components. Go to Macy's.com or many of these other stores, um, BarnesandNoble.com, um, and you can purchase products through there. In fact, in many cases, when a customer comes into a retail store and they don't have the item in the store, they'll guide the customer to a computer terminal and help them order it online. So that way, they're still getting the sale. So, in addition, we have what are called pop-up stores, um, and these are stores that temporarily pop up. They're short-term, usually seasonal. You occasionally see a Christmas store or a Halloween store, or one for the summer, so forth. Um, Obviously, there are issues of finding space to rent, but they simply take advantage of a seasonal demand. In addition, you might have similar things with like events, like farmers markets. Many towns will have one day a week farmers come in and offer their fresher foods and things like that. Street fairs, you'll see a lot of retail going on there. Various festivals like book festivals, things like that. Various food festivals, and there's an opportunity to make sales. But again, it's a very limited, time-wise, a very limited situation. We also have resale stores. And again, this is probably not of much concern if you're a manufacturer. You're not going to distribute through retail or what are called thrift shops. These are for essentially recycling products or getting products that maybe didn't sell in other stores. And you have people who call jobbers who go to stores and say, what's not selling? And they buy it for, so many pennies on the dollar, and then try to sell it elsewhere. So, there's always a place in the economy for innovation, even though it's not necessarily high-end innovation, but, there you go. Some retail issues for manufacturers. One thing is getting a share of shelf space. Let's say I'm a cereal manufacturer and I want as much space on the shelf in that supermarket as I can possibly get. How do I do it? Well, and I may have mentioned this previously, one thing is by offering various line extensions. Think of Cheerios and how many different versions of Cheerios there are. There's regular Cheerios, cinnamon Cheerios, whole wheat Cheerios, and I'm sure there's some others. I'm not a cereal eater, but I know they're all out there. And they get many what are called facings, many being at the front of the shelf. And that whatever's behind the shelf is the same thing. That's one way of getting more space. Obviously, you need a high demand product. If your product doesn't sell, the retailer's not going to want to carry your product and not put it on the shelf. So other tactics you can engage in is maybe giving free product, or some manufacturers will pay for space on the shelf, or give other financial incentives. So you'll see that. Obviously, the more facings you have, the fewer facings or less space there's available for your competitors. So it's kind of a someone once described the retail space as a theater of war for brands. Trying to get as much territory as possible. You also might be concerned with in-store positioning. In a store with standard aisles, where do you want to be? Most of people would say, "Oh, I want to be on the front end cap, the end of the aisle, the front end." Thinking in terms of, let's say, a supermarket, And I think we mentioned previously at the back corner of the supermarket is going to be the milk and maybe the bread. So will people pass by those end caps and see? Generally, you want to be eye level on the shelf. Um, you probably don't want to be too far in the middle. You probably want to be on either end. Things are easier to find on the ends as opposed to the middle. Although I was in one store in Bayville, New Jersey, where uh, they actually had the shelves bump out, actually jut out just a little bit, maybe only 6 inches at the most. Sort of a rounded shelf, and that place would be good real estate, a good place to have your product because it forces the consumer going through the store to look at it, to see it. Also, we would want, as manufacturers, to want to have promotional support from the store, from the retailer, having them, advertise the product, maybe have specials, coupons, that sort of thing. And we will probably work with them to do that. So, the retailer also has concerns and issues. Obviously, inventory management. They don't want the management. They don't want inventory on their shelves too long. One, it might go bad, assuming it is a somewhat perishable product. But also, think of, if you have something on the shelf that stays there for a long time, it's not selling. So maybe you want to get rid of that and put something that is selling in its place. And so you want inventory that will turn over as quickly as possible. Uh, when I was speaking to somebody about turnover in the supermarkets, they said the fastest turning aisle is the salty snack aisle, various chips. That turns over faster than the sweet snack aisle. And so they monitor this and how quickly things turn over. And they want, their inventory to circulate or cycle as quickly as possible. And you also want to keep track. Again, and we've talked previously about this, you don't want overstocking situations. You don't want shortages. You don't want empty shelves. Empty shelves looks very bad. It leaves a bad impression with the consumer. And also that means that's wasted shelf space. It's an asset that is not producing. So you want to have full shelves and you want to have them cycle. And there are various tools we've talked about previously. Barcode scanners instead of somebody with a clipboard as they did years ago, and that will help manage inventory. And we talked a little bit about radio frequency identification, which is mostly works at the back end of the store. What that doing. Also, you want good personnel quality. You want good people, people who have good attitudes, people who are competent. The higher quality a worker is, usually the more they want to be paid. And in many cases, retail, if I mentioned the low margins, they don't want to pay a lot for labor. And so how do you get good people to work retail, work of good quality? And this is an ongoing challenge. How do they keep their labor costs down, but they still have a competent labor force? And there is some training, and how do you also want people who are customer friendly, so forth. I went to there was a chain of stores called Comp USA. They're out of business now, but I would go there for various things, and I was amazed at how incredibly poor the service was. Remember I was looking for a printer that would work with a Macintosh computer, and I saw these two clerks, not sales reps, but the clerks, and I asked them, excuse me, where, and they said, oh, well, it's over there. Just a general waving of the hand, pointing me in a general direction, as opposed to taking me over there and talking to me about them or guiding me to a product, which I thought was very unprofessional. And these two people were actually working on a video game, trying to find a cheat code or a Easter egg or something like that. I don't know. And another time I was there, I bought a labeling system for CDs and DVDs, and I asked them about would it work with my operating system, because it wasn't listed. I had something at the time called Windows Millennium Edition, which was not the greatest operating system, but apparently and it didn't say it would work with that. And this person said, oh, no, no, it'll work with all Windows systems. Well, guess what? It didn't. And I ended up having to bring this back. And I got a refund, but the person just took the product that I bought and threw it in a bin. I don't know if they were going to be thrown out or what, but I was just sort of amazed at the waste. And CompUSA went out of business, and I say good, because they were very poorly managed, and a lot of it had to do with their personnel quality. Checkout, of course, is an issue. Many stores have man checkout, which we've been quite familiar with for many years. But more recently, there has been automated checkout, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with these systems where you put you scan the barcode on the it pulls up the price. More recent systems actually you have to put it on a scale so it can tell how much it should weigh, and that to prevent cheating. And usually they will have one person sort of monitoring maybe a group of checkout stations, maybe up to 4, and just in case somebody has a problem, but also to keep an eye on anyone who tries to cheat. Labor costs. These machines don't get tired. They don't generally make mistakes. They will work 24 hours a day if it's a 24-hour day kind of store. They're never late. This is an example of human beings being replaced by technology. As a human being, I'm not thrilled with that, but as a consumer, I've started to use these because it is often faster than having to wait in line for the man checkout. And we will see this becoming even more of the standard. Right now, I'd say in most stores, about a third of the checkout is automated, but that could change, and I suspect it will. Certainly, as the product buying population, gets younger. Well, not as young, but as those younger people who are very comfortable with technology, get older and make greater purchases. We've also seen the rise of e-tailing, online sales, online purchasing, and that is sort of it's where the world has been going, and it's where it will continue to go. Also, retail entertainment. Somebody used the term retailtainment. I don't particularly like the term, but where, let's say at malls, you have entertainment as well as purchase opportunities. That way you encourage people to do things. You have shows where there are opportunities. For instance, I was watching a comedian online the other day, and he was talking about at the end, I have merchandise, I have shirts and other things you can buy, which is not exactly the same, but the idea is creating more and more opportunities for face-to-face purchases. And that's experiential shopping, where you experience the thing before you buy it, and that of course is a problem with online purchasing. You can't experience products very well. There are many simulations. For instance, there's a website called Zazzle, where anyone can take designs and put them on. I think they've got hundreds of products you can put on, like mugs and iPhone covers and shower curtains and all these things. And they actually are very good at simulating, but it's not exactly the same as touching and feeling. And so they're trying to create more experiential shopping where you can be involved as much as you can. Another retail issue is shrinkage. Shrinkage is when the merchandise is depleted in some way other than through purchase. That might be theft. It might be stuff that's gone bad. It just might be, just damaged. Shoplifting. So a shrinkage is where the inventory is reduced in any way other than through purchasing. And this can be a real problem. You often have, as I said, shoplifting, employee theft, and damage. Um, and there's a problem. Shoplifting, sure. Employee theft is probably, in most cases, more likely than the shoplifting, but still. And yes, products do get damaged. Sometimes they're damaged by employees. Sometimes they're damaged by non-employees. And you either can't sell them or you have to sell them at a discount, and that's obviously money out of the retailer's pocket, one way or another. And then there is another practice called retail borrowing, where people buy something, use it, and then return it. I've heard this being done, for instance, for young women who want to go to a prom or go to a wedding, and they buy a dress, don't pull off the tags, hide the tags, wear the garment, and then return it. And that is another form of shrinkage. So, because I mean, yes, the store is getting it back, and let's assume it's undamaged, but they're not making the money they would have made. Well, moving on to wholesalers. Wholesalers are generally the invisible, middle people, middlemen, and they buy from manufacturers and they sell to retailers. And their value proposition is to provide better logistics, efficient, cost-effective logistics, provide distribution. Not all retailers are big chains, and so it's sometimes more effective to have this in-between stop, where a company buys large amounts of product and then distributes it to smaller retailers. And they are mostly unknown to consumers. Very difficult to, I can name a handful of consumers, like in New Jersey, there's Gargiulo Foods, and there's a couple others. But most consumers are completely unaware of these wholesalers. It's clearly a business-to-business operation. They are often experts. In fact, they are always experts in supply chain management. How do we get product to certain places? And I actually got to visit a wholesale operation center. It was actually, I believe it was out in California, and it was to do with crops and produce. And actually, it was in a tall building. It's kind of strange. It was like a tower at the airport, only it was overlooking various fields of crops. I think the wholesaler owned some of the fields, and therefore was also a manufacturer, a producer. But they didn't just manage their own. And they had people with headsets on. It was like they were flight controllers. And they said, "Oh yes, you need 50 pounds of broccoli. Okay, on Tuesday. Okay, we have a truck coming your way, so you should get it at a certain time." And they were mapping out routes and trucks and what people needed, and they would load up trucks in a certain way to be the most efficient and to have zero or as little air in the truck as possible, so you're getting the maximum amount of product delivered for the gasoline and the labor that you're going to use to get it there. And very efficient, and they're using computer programs and mathematical models, and and efficient distribution is essentially their business. Okay, so this is what we've talked about, a little bit more about distribution, and don't overlook retail and wholesale in terms of marketing opportunities. Okay, if you have any questions, you can email me or communicate to me via Canvas, and take care.